Hola clase. Today we're going to be talking about ser versus estar. Now, as many of you know from your earlier Spanish years, ser means to be and estar also means to be. Is this annoying? Sí. Pero we need to do this. So let's go over some of the key concepts here. A cool way of remembering these concepts is through the acronyms doctor and place. Ser uses the acronym doctor, and estar uses the acronym place. So, what do these stand for? The D in doctor stands for description, like I am boring, and the O stands for occupation, the C stands for characteristics, the T stands for time, the O stands for origin, and the R stands for relationship. Like, for relationship, because that's one of the more difficult ones, this is my pencil. Este es mi... no recuerda. Pero, you guys understand the point. And for estar, place is position, location, action, condition, and emotion. Now, all of these are kind of confusing because there's some overlap, like between a characteristic and a condition. So, if you think about it, right, like, I'll use the example of, like, a characteristic is something that is true about someone, like, soy is happy. It'd be soy es feliz, not está feliz, because I am a happy person. But if I were saying soy is happy today in this particular moment, then it would be soy está feliz, because that's describing my condition at a particular point in time. And then there's all sorts of cool ones like position and location, which are pretty self-explanatory. Like, your location is very subjective and it changes all the time. Like, soy está en Mexico, pero the next day I could be in Guadalupe, and the next day in Paris. And actually, I wouldn't go to Paris, but you get the point. Bueno. Remember the thing that all your other teachers taught you about how ser is permanent? Yeah, forget that. They were wrong. For example, what grade you're in high school. I am a senior. Soy un senior. Pero, while that is a condition, or it's short term, it's not a condition, rather it's a characteristic or even an occupation. It could be, described as my job, and in a current place and time, my occupation is being a senior in high school. For example, being a doctor, too, can change. So, whatever you were told about ser being permanent was not true. You were lied to. Bueno. For example, a description of someone versus a condition. So, we already went over this kind of, but one of the biggest problems is a condition, a characteristic of someone's personality can sometimes appear to be a condition. However, it's not, which is why it's really important to remember that it's not permanent and that ser can be a temporary thing. Bueno, there are some adjectives that change using ser and estar. For example, aburrido. In ser, it means boring, and in estar, it means bored. So, you're describing someone as boring as opposed to describing someone as bored at a certain period of time. Like, soy was bored in class today. Soy fue aburrido en clase ayer. Pero it's describing me in a certain period of time, so you use está, but that's probably not the best example because in the preterite they are the same. So, another one is listo. Listo in the ser form stands for means smart, and in the estar form means ready. Rico means rich in the ser form, and tasty in the estar form. Seguro means safe in the ser form, and sure in the estar form. Verde means green in the ser form, and ripe in the estar form. And bueno means good in the ser form, and tasty or sexy in the estar form. So, just to kind of focus on a few of these, a great example is ser. A characteristic of something is that it is green. For example, mi teléfono son verde. Mi teléfono es verde. That's an example of a characteristic of my phone. But la manzana está verde means that it is ripe, because being ripe is a condition, because it could soon enough change and you would no longer be ripe. Moving on. There are some pretty cool exceptions to the rules that don't use ser and estar. For example, it's hot out, which is in Spanish hace calor, or I'm hot, which is tengo calor. Logically, those would have ser and estar, but they don't. They have tengo and hace and all kinds of nonsense in Spanish, like we usually have in Spanish, the irregular, which is what makes the language interesting and cool and so much better than English. So, ¿quieres practicar? Sí, quieres practicar. No tienes una opción. So, in Spanish, how would you say something like, I am tall? Miguel? Soy alto? Bueno, Miguel, me gusta. I can tell you've been paying attention. Good job. Pedro, how would you say something like, I am in Mexico, or I am eating? Soy Mexico. No, Pedro, you are not Mexico. Horrible. Moving on, the way you would say this is estoy en Mexico, because Mexico is Mexico, porque Mexico is a location, and locations, as we know from our acronym place, belong with the estars. Horrible, Pedro. Moving on. How would you say, Pablo, how would you say Juan is bored and Maria is boring? Juan es aburrido y Maria está aburrida. Horrible, Pablo. No es correcto. No, so, the way you would actually say this is Juan está aburrido y Maria es aburrida. The reason is that Juan is bored at a certain point in time, but Maria is boring in general, and that's a characteristic of her personality. Thus, we would use ser. Gracias. Email me with any questions you have, clase. Thank you for your time. Adios.